As a fifth-generation farmer, Marie's focus on presentation will focus on how farming practices have progressed since the days of her grandpa, and Gordon will present on forestry for tonight. So, we'll let you take it away, Marie.
Sorry, I just want to say one thing we forgot. We're doing video, which we will post this video to YouTube. So when it does come to question and answer later, if there's anyone who does not want their face to be on a video on the internet, please let us know so that we don't get you on video at that time when you do a question. Okay? Just wanted to let everybody know that disclaimer right now.
It's up there. It's not working there. Good evening, everybody. Okay, so it's not working on here, but it's working up there. Fantastic. I love it.
Oh, sure.
Oh, and I realize we're in the block for the bathroom, too. So if someone has an emergency, just scream fire and we'll all go somewhere. No, I'm kidding. Don't scream fire. Bad idea. And my husband told me not to tell jokes tonight. I'm already doing it. Oh, there we go. All right, so we're Lane Families for Farms and Forests. We started in the spring of 2016 as we realized that a lot of people don't understand, don't know what's happening in the fields and forests as they're driving along I-5, driving Highway 99. And we came up with this mission statement, committed to harnessing support for Lane County's rich heritage of agriculture and forestry, two cornerstones of our local community, because Lane County, you know, started with farming and forestry, and it's still a very viable and important industry here today. And like I said, we took a realization in spring of 2016, and said, we need to get out and talk to people in our community, because we're part of the community, and no one's gonna go stop alongside the road and ask me what I'm doing in my field, or find Gordon in the trees and see what he's doing in the trees. So we wanted to get out and start talking about what we're doing, talking about why we do what we do and why we love what we do. So I'm Marie. I'm looking a little different tonight than I looked up there. I'm a fifth-generation farmer. We primarily farm grass seed, sometimes wheat when the price is all right, meadowfoam, and other seed crops. My husband Tristan's here tonight. He joined the farm in 2013 when I said, working with your family is really fun and everyone gets along all the time. And he believed me, and then we got married, and now he doesn't believe me anymore. So. And then, of course, I'm president of Lane Families for Farms and Forests, and we farm in Lynn and Lane counties. Currently, Tristan and I live in Coburg, Oregon, on a piece of property that was part of my grandma's great-grandparents' donation land claimed in 1865. The name of our farm is Bashaw Land and Seed, and I don't know if you guys probably don't know what Bashaw is. It's a type of soil. It's a really crappy, poor draining type of soil, but it grows annual ryegrass really, really well. And that's mostly what our farm is made of. So that's why we grow what we grow, because our soil dictates that first and foremost. And then when my grandpa retired in 1996, this is the farm my dad established. So anyway, and I'll tell you more about our farm in a little bit, but that's my family when my great-grandma was still alive. She lived to be 97 years old. So.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see we've got such a good crowd. It's an interesting opportunity. My name is Gordon Culbertson. I have been a resident of Lane County all my life, and have been working in the forest industry virtually all of my working years. I'm a small woodland owner. We own a little company called Whitewater Forests. Our tree farms are certified by the American Tree Farm System and the Oregon Tree Farm System, and I'm the vice chair of Lane Families for Farms and Forests. Our working in the land is really pretty deep in our family. For well over 100 years, someone in our immediate family has made their living either farming or working in forestry. And so it is something that we do naturally. This picture here is my son. My son and daughter are actively engaged in the management of our business. And we really enjoy doing it together.
So just some basics about Lane County in case you guys didn't know, just to kind of start from the basics. We're in Lane County. It was established in 1851. The population then was 4,780, and today it is now the 4th largest county by population and the 6th largest county by land area. So let's talk about some Lane County agriculture. As you heard in the trivia question, we have over 2,600 farms. In 2012, the Lane County had agricultural sales of 142 million. And then farming, you know, like I said, 5th generation, been farming land that's been in my family for over 100 years. And, you know, 98% of farms are family owned and operated, which you guys all learned in the trivia, so. And again, this is another trivia question. So 220 commodities, and on the bottom is our top 10 commodities, which I think Lane County has all of them pretty much, except for maybe potatoes commercially grown. We grow a plethora of crops. Like I said, we mainly grow grass seed, but I know there are hazelnut farmers in the room. I know that there are livestock producers in the room and milk producers in the room. And then also, my favorite one is, did you guys know that Lane County and Benton County grow like the most sugar beet seed in the nation? Which I kind of find it interesting, because then it goes off and becomes a beet and then gets processed into sugar. And so if you want to buy local Lane County sugar, just go buy the bag of sugar in the store that's just labeled sugar. So yeah, you can buy local Lane County sugar. And then that's a picture of metafoam. Do you guys know what metafoam's used for? Yeah, it's an oil, takes place of the sperm whale oil, and it's used in high-end cosmetics. It's one of a rotational crop for us. So let's talk about how farming's changed since the days of my grandpa. This photo's a little older than my grandpa, but that's what a combine looked like in the 1920s versus what it looks like now. You had pretty much 3 people operating a combine, and now we have 15-year-old kids operating combines. So I don't know which is less stress, but we've definitely increased efficiency. We used to have 7 windrows or 7 swathers, stuff that we cut the grass with, and now we are down to 3 windrowers that we cut the grass with. And it's become a lot easier, not working 24 hours a day. It's a lot easier to get some sleep during the cutting season so you don't exhaust yourself to death. Another thing we've changed is in our seed cleaning facility, we have an automatic stacker, which takes the place of one person and then eliminates that labor, but also then stacks bags nice and neat so they're not falling over when you stack them in a pile. So, and then increased precision, which I will talk about here in a little bit. So, confession, I don't know how to plow. I've never ran a plow in my life. I don't even think we still own a plow on the farm. It might be back in the Blackberry somewhere. And we just sold our big tillage disc this year because we don't use them anymore. That's because soil is our most valuable commodity. And we're not the exception to the rule. We are the rule. All farmers and try to do this is to minimize impact and compaction. So we have different systems on the farm that we use. We do still use some full tillage where we rip up the soil and then work it under, but we don't use that very often. I don't think maybe a quarter of the farm not even that, less than a quarter of our farm this year was full tilled. We try to rotate through because, again, soil, soil dictates what we do, and if we don't treat it well, it won't treat us well. And so we also have minimum tillage, which is when we use full tillage, it's typically that we have a pest problem in the field, we have weed problems that we need to get rid of, and it's one method to use, but it also takes a lot of tractor time and a lot of diesel and a lot of, it's a great tool and it's still necessary, but again, we don't utilize it that much. And then we have minimum tillage, which utilizes a little bit more, which then we'll go through and break up the stubble and make a nice seed bed for the seeds to go plant into. And we have these fancy discs that go real fast. And then we also do no-till. And no-till, I hear it all the time as a buzzword, and our farm's been doing no-till for probably 3 decades now. So it's nothing new to us, but that's where we go. And so that's my drill down there. I do all the planting on the farm, and that's my tractor. And so I can do regular planting, or I can no-till in the seeds, which means I have discs in the front that cut into the soil for a little seed bed. The seed's planted and the fertilizer's planted, and then a packer wheel comes along and kind of packs it down nicely. So, and then we do a lot of volunteering. So if a crop, say, in a Gulf annual ryegrass field or a tetraploid annual ryegrass field has been established in one place for a really long time, typically we can let that go for a year and it'll grow back to the same seed. And yeah, it's a good way not to get out in the field and make a mess, and not a good way to burn diesel. So as again, soil determines the crop. I guess I should mention also that a third of our farm is located in the Coast Fork watershed. We farm between Goshen and Cresswell, and so I do have a vested interest in what you guys are doing. And Camuswell Creek runs right there, and that's what we call it. We call it Camuswell. So the photo on the left is actually a photo of Camuswell, the soil. It's a soil called Natroy, which is even worse clay than Bashaw. And in the summertime, you guys have probably seen this down here where it cracks and you can stick your hand down or lose a bunch of tools down it too as well if you're broke down. And so, but again, it grows annual ryegrass really well. We also have in the same area, we also have a wetlands down here in the Coast Fork watershed, I guess you'd say, because we had one field that it was better as a wetlands than it was a producing grass seed field. So we converted it about 7 years ago to a wetlands, and so it's got ponds out there, and we worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do that. And so, but it grows, that's what we grow out there is annual ryegrass, because it's not going to grow tall fescue, which is on the picture on the right, which the green stuff's tall fescue, turf-type tall fescue, which goes to lawns. And then the picture on the yellow stuff on the right is a canola field. So we're always trying to figure out what we can grow with what soil we have and what's going to be the best rotational crop, because we try to make that work. This is my soapbox story that annual ryegrass will save the world. I had to throw this in here. But basically, I mean, it feeds sheep, it feeds cows, it goes to China and feeds the carp, right? Yeah. And it also it's growing in the cover crop market in the Midwest because it's a nitrogen scavenger. So when corn farmers or soybean farmers plant annual ryegrass, they've found that it'll take up the extra nitrogen that's left over from the corn and the soybeans. And actually, the Gulf of Mississippi has a large algae bloom, and it's actually starting to help cure that up and clean up the waters, and because they have some erosion issues and some other soil quality issues. And then the newest thing, I mean, that's the thing about what we do. So annual ryegrass has been around for a really, really long time, but they're still finding new uses for it. They're still finding ways it can improve things. So does anyone know what fragipan is? Okay. It's basically like a cement of soil that can't be broken up, and so then they have a really shallow seed bed. And in Kentucky and in parts of the Midwest is a problem. Well, they've now found that if they plant annual ryegrass, there's something in the roots will go down and break through it, and then there's chemicals in the roots that continue to break up this fragipan that makes their soil more productive for them. So this is just, I pulled this that from a study here. There's this article in 2016 about the researchers believe annual ryegrass key to breaking fragipan. So again, I say annual ryegrass will save the world, so we'll just see one day. And it also is an erosion. It helps prevent erosion as well against the cover crops, plant it on the hillsides after a forest harvest or whatever. So, okay, so as again I said, soil is one of our number one, it's our top priority. So here is our fertilizer buggy. Okay, so that's our old fertilizer buggy in the top left corner. It's stuck. That's not good. It's not good for the soil. It's not good for blood pressure. It's not good for anything. And so that was 2013, I believe. So then the next year, we had this plan. We added tracks to our buggy, which then minimized the surface compaction and increased the surface area. But we still had a front tire on it, which in really more saturated soils, it's challenging as well because it pushes mud around. And so now we're improving again. This is just an example in the last, I guess, 5 years what we've done to trying to improve and lower the impact on our soil is we recently purchased a new tractor, or not a new to us tractor, which is called a road track. And it can spread out its tracks so you're not following track to track. And then we purchased this fertilizer spreader out of Germany, and we're going to attach to the back of the tractor and hopefully minimize our soil compaction. What did you say it was pounds per square inch, Tristan? 4.6 pounds per square inch of weight will be going across the field with this thing. The cool thing about this, so yes, our fertilizer spreader had a computer that calculated how many pounds per acre it was putting out. And this one will do that too, but it also recalibrates the spinners every 15 seconds, every 15 seconds. And then it also has the capability of sensing the wind. And so it'll sense the wind and readjust the throw pattern to compensate for the wind speed, which, I don't know, that's pretty cool. Like, you take away sowing, you take away overspreading, you take away, just all kinds of fantastic. You won't have strips in fields anymore where you miss a spot of fertilizer, hopefully, unless you're a bad driver like I was last year. And then, so as I mentioned, GPS is part of it. So we have our yield maps, auto steer, and water management, and then application accuracy. This is a picture of my computer in my planter tractor, and I'm on an A-B line because I can't drive straight to save my life, so thankfully there's auto steer. And it's those little black triangles dropping out while I'm taking a survey of the field while I'm driving along, and I'll show you what that does in a second. And then along with it, it meters out how many pounds per acre of seed I'm putting out, how much fertilizer I'm putting out. And one of the coolest things that we have gotten recently is on my dad's sprayer, we have a 12-section boom control. So it's a 100-foot sprayer, and he recently, went to 12 sections, and so, sometimes we say, oh, it'll be, 0.5 acres. Well, now our acres are to the exact acre the field's measured in because of the accuracy of the sprayer. And he's using the exact amount of materials that he needs. And so there's no overlap, there's nothing, and it's amazing. Okay, so this is actually one of our fields down here in Camiswell. And so we use this. This is one of our yield maps. And you're probably looking at the numbers on the side saying, why, those orange and red spots are where the goose damage was. So I don't know if you guys noticed that geese have become a problem in Oregon. They don't go where they're supposed to go during the time of the years they're supposed to go. So my dad's on a goose task force, and he wanted to show the goose task force, this is the damage to our field. So I pulled up the yield map, and I was able to calculate that 38% of our acres were affected. We had a 41% yield loss, and because of that, we lost $380 an acre that year because of geese damage. And it was we watched them all winter long sit in those spots, so we knew exactly what happened. It's not like I just guessed that's where the geese were. We've been watching them. So that's one of the things we use the yield maps for. Another funny story is when we pulled up a yield map to see if a certain type of crop oil that we put on worked. And we couldn't figure out why the yield was better in a certain area than it was on the rest of the field. And then I pointed out to my dad, that's when I took over driving the windrower. And when I got in it, you had left me with a plugged header for most of the field, apparently. So that just makes you feel good when you can one-up your dad once in a while. So another, water management's huge on our farm. Clearly, we have saturated soils, and we don't want water standing there. We don't want drowned out crop. We don't want, stagnant water. We want to keep it moving. So we make ditches on our farm. We do land forming. We do some tiling on different types of property. Here, the map to the right is a topographic map that I created from the tractor. And when I load it into my computer program, it'll show me the flow paths of the water, and it'll show me lines of those natural ditches, the major ditches in the field. And then I can go along, and because when you work the field, it's just flat, and then it's not, but they show where the drainages are supposed to be. So then I'll go along and draw the ditches, and my dad will put it into his computer. I'll draw them, load it on a thumb drive, give it to my dad. He will go make the ditch, and but now he also has the ability in his tractor to go where, again, people with lots of decades of experience can look at a field and say, that ditch needs to go right there. I can't do that. I like my computer. But I'm sure one day I'll be there. But my dad will look and say, well, I think, no, the ditch needs to be there. And so he'll drive where he knows where the ditch needs to be. The computer surveys it while he goes along. He puts in what slope he wants it at, and he comes back and it cuts it at that slope to different heights to make sure it's perfectly there so the water flows efficiently out of the field. It's pretty cool. And then this picture down here is our newest land forming water management tool. It's called a swing blade. And what it does is, so I surveyed this bottom right field, and that's what the pattern was. As you can see, those are the flow paths. Apparently, this field had been plowed around and round and round and round, and someone else tried to put a ditch in that wasn't in the right spot. So, not saying that previous people just didn't do it the way they should have been doing it, or not paying attention, something like that. I don't want to talk bad about my neighbor farmers, but you know. So to survey the field, I plugged it into our program on the computer. We then did some calculating with some ratios, because you got to account for how much it'll like melt down. And then that's the shape of the field it's supposed to be. As you can see, all the ditches are going towards one main ditch and flowing out to where they should go. And well, it's the flow patterns, I should say. Like it changed the shape of the field so the water flows to where the natural way it should be. So, and then this is what we call a cut fill map, and it shows that all that blue area needs to get filled in, and all the yellow areas where he's going to cut from. My husband runs the land plane, so he could tell you more about it. But 0.58 feet is how much he needs to fill, which is what, a little over 6 inches, 7 inches, and he's cutting close to, I guess, a little less than a foot of wherever he goes around and finds the dirt, and the computer will automatically find the dirt and cut and fill where it needs to do. It's pretty cool. So I've really just touched on a few things because I know we're short on time. So because we have lots of cool technologies and just amazing. It blows my grandpa's mind, you know, when he tells me he used to have to haul bags of fertilizer to the fertilizer buggy when now we just have a truck that we dump it out of. And, you know, we're innovative, like I showed you the track picture and stuff like that. You know, so, but our goals are to continue. I'm 5th generation, you know, we continue to think about the future and what we want to do, but it's not without challenges for sure. I didn't touch, you know, we have a slug problem, as you guys heard in the trivia question, and there's no real solution for that, and we need tools and innovative ways to figure out how to deal with that. I mean, we have an Oregon State slug researcher right now, but how many years till we find the solution? There are options out there, but they're not necessarily available to us. Labor is a challenge for everybody. Mostly since we hire teenagers in the summertime, we find it hard that they don't really like to work long hours. And I think our seedling warehouse lost a guy every day or every week this summer. So it was pretty challenging. And then, you know, again, why Lane Families for Farms and Forests started. People don't understand what we're doing and why we're doing it out there. So we wanted to start telling you about this cool technology, because it blows my mind every day and I love it. And then we have a growing population with less and less people working in agriculture. So that's also a challenge. And right now I'll turn it over to Gordon. He can tell you about forestry in Lane County.
Okay, well, let's shift over to forestry. About 90% of Lane County is forest land. About 35% of it is privately owned, and the remainder is owned by the federal and state government. Lane County is the #2 timber producing county in the United States, and it is second only to Douglas County. Oregon's forest acres have remained unchanged since 1953, and this time there's been considerable harvesting, and Oregon's forests have built about 25 million homes. Douglas fir is the most common species that we find in the forests of Oregon, western Oregon. Looking at logging then and now, it's changed quite a lot here over the last century. Since 1972, Oregon forest operations have been regulated by the Oregon Forest Practices Act, and that Forest Practices Act has been updated consistently throughout that time. That law requires reforestation, protects soils, water, and wildlife habitat. Production of wood and paper products needed by society employ thousands of people in the state of Oregon. Well, our primary business is we are a small woodland owner, and I wanted to kind of share with you who the profile of Oregon's small forest owners. Family forests are made up of ownerships up to 5,000 acres. There's about 70,000 individual owners, and they own about 4 million acres total. Roughly speaking, that's just slightly less than the number of acres owned by industry. These forests provide clean water, wildlife habitat, carbon storage, plant diversity, open space, wood products, and a significant contribution to our economy. The harvest for the small woodland owners is about 400 million board feet annually, or about 10% of the total wood products produced in the state. So I'd also like to, at this time now, tell you a little bit about our business. It's called Whitewater Forests. In 2000, we established that family business. The purpose of it was to kind of get back to the land. Our family farms had been sold, and both my wife and I had a desire to really continue in that heritage and to share that heritage with our children and our grandchildren. As I said, the connection to the land is very important to our family. My mother's family first came to the United States from Sweden and started farming in the 1880s. We have 2 separate ownerships that total about 120 acres. Our lands are certified under the American and Oregon tree farm systems, and we're active members in the Oregon Small Woodlands Association, which is a trade group and an educational group that the membership are people that own small forest land tracts. Our goal is intensive management of forest, among other things. And we're very fortunate in the age class of our forests. We can have a commercial harvest about once each decade. We have a number of regulatory considerations. We have fish-bearing streams. I'll show you some examples of that later. Scenic highway corridor, and one of our properties has an adjacent spotted owl nesting site. And we've had about 4 generations that have been involved in our family forest lands. The American Tree Farm certification, I'm not going to go through this point by point, but a couple of things that I'm very interested in. Vegetation, soil type, the historical reference of our property, and I'll talk a little bit about our historical reference as well. Fish and wildlife compatibility, water resources, and recreation are something that we're very interested in. This chart shows the age class distribution of our land, and on the extreme left are trees that are 50 years and older, and then in the third one over to the left are trees that are less than 5 years old. So we have a variety of age classes on our property. One thing that I would like to share with you is on the extreme right are lands that are set aside by regulation, federal and state regulation, that we're not able to practice forestry on. And that is about 7% of our total acreage. And then the non-forest is an old homestead. 2003 was our first timber harvest, and this is at our small woodland down at Elkton, Oregon. After harvest, we planted 400 seedlings to the acre. And this is that same site when those trees were 9 years old. This picture was taken several years ago now. As I said, water quality, fish habitat, and stream protection are issues that are important to us. This stream on the right-hand side there is in a buffer strip. That's in a harvest buffer strip. That is a small fish-bearing stream. We developed a written plan with our stewardship forester. That written plan allowed us to harvest some valuable trees while in the same, at the same time leaving what was required excess in basal area. Basal area, just if you know what that is, that's the area covered by the base of the tree. And I think that this was a very successful outcome. That's a really nice looking stream buffer, and we have a lot of fish that run in that every year. Currently, there have been some new prescriptive rules that were put in place this last year, and really, to tell you the truth, I think that those rules are probably not going to allow us to be as successful with a collaborative effort, as it's very prescriptive, a one-size-fits-all measure, and it will also increase the restricted acres on our land. As I said, care of roads, drainage, and just the care of water resources are very important to us. When we acquired this property, trespassers had been running through there as a shortcut between a power line right-of-way and the county road, and really had torn up the road. And this is actually adjacent to where a fish stream passes under the road. And so one of our first priorities when we bought the property was to try to work collaboratively with the Department of Forestry, and to also work with the Bonneville Power Administration, who has an easement, that's how they were, getting onto the property. First thing we did is we put in a gate to secure access and to keep trespassers out. And then we went to work repairing that section of the road, placing some perf pipe in so it would drain properly, and making sure that the drainage carried to an appropriate spot. This is that same area 4 years later, and we have taken good care of it. I'm very proud of the way that looks, and that's an all-season road now that we can use that year-round. This is an example on one of our harvest units of our mechanized site preparation. And we use prescribed burning. This is the last unit that we harvested, that the trees are about 5 years old now. And that is that harvest unit. That's looking right where pretty much where we burned. Invasive species are always a big challenge for us. I make an effort, particularly with the Scotch broom, to try to get every Scotch broom plant that I see. And I took this one day more as a joke than anything, because I thought I had all the Scotch broom, and I looked out there and saw that. That's taller than I am. We are in the process of thinning some 25-year-old forest of ours. We have about, on this area, about 300 trees to the acre. We're thinning it down, leaving the best 180 to 200 trees per acre. And then we prune those trees up about as high as I can reach with a power saw when we're done. This is kind of an interesting picture. On the right is an old springboard stump. You can see the notch in it, and that tree was harvested by the Penn Lumber Company in about 1920, and then the stump that's in the upper foreground was harvested in 1992, and then one of the thinning stumps right below there. So there's quite a number of years history there. And then to finish up, I showed that we had part of our acreage that was in a homestead. And this is a historical area out in the old community of what was called McGlynn on Wildcat Creek. Years ago, there was a mill there called the Penn Lumber Company. This was an old homestead. Those are two of the the biggest walnut trees I've ever seen, and we use that as a family picnic spot, gathering spot, and we have our family meeting there every year to talk about what we're going to do on our land. It's a very special spot to us, and I must say that the history has been kind of the history of that area has become one of my hobbies. I think that one of the key things about Lane Families for Farms and Forests is that we are interested in creating an environment that our families can carry these businesses on after we're gone. Would you like to take over?
Sure. Thanks, Gordon. Well, as you can see, our farms and forests are sustainable. Oh, yes. Our family farms and forests are sustainable, generational, and that we are really committed to the community and what we want to do to make sure we're part of it too. And we want to make sure what we're doing is the best for it, and everyone make sure it's available for future generations and continues to be a vital industry. So that's kind of what we had. I mean, I can put up what we've done and the activities we've done recently, our community events. We have Lane County Ag and Forestry fact sheets as you guys came in, and hope you grabbed some. We have brochures about who we do, and if you're interested in any of our future events, there's a sign-up sheet there too, so we can keep you on our email list. But I guess we can open it up for Q&A now, or yeah. Oh, we're ahead of schedule? High five, Gordon.
Great.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to wear this,
I guess I can put it, as a group, we've really tried to do some community outreach groups to, there's Ed. So we've had a kickoff party. We've had Feast in the Forest, Feast on the Farm. We did a meet and greet with the Lane County Historical Society. And the feast events have been, we also did a community tour. We've really tried to put the focus on, our local farmers and foresters and what we do, and getting the ingredients from the local farms, like I said, even the sugar. So, yeah, again, if you guys are interested in attending one of those, please put up on our sign-up sheet. And I think that's pretty much it about just a little plug about our organization. You can visit us on our website, too, lanefamilies.com.
All right, well, thank you so much. If there's, we could do a little bit more raffle ticket sales too. So if anybody wants to do that, just put your hand up and we'll come around for you. Otherwise, we can probably start question and answer. If everybody can just say your answer clearly, and the speaker will be repeating the question so that it's sure to be clear, especially for our YouTube video.
Well, first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about your friend, and when that happens, that's a tragedy. The cause of that would not, your statement, what you've said that is the cause, wouldn't fit with my experience, and so I think that we'll just have to agree to disagree on that, because I have a different view of that than you do.
That's a tough question. He wants to know how much of our Oregon grass seed goes to turf and how much goes to cover crop. Well, I don't know the exact answer for that. Maybe somebody else might, but I do know, as I said, Lynn County is the grass seed capital of the world, and that's the grass seed capital of the world because of annual ryegrass. And annual ryegrass, again, I said will save the world, but it goes into pastures, it goes into cover crops, it goes overseas to feed animals. And I guess another tidbit I didn't mention is our annual ryegrass straw goes and feeds Wagyu beef. So when you pay a lot of money for your Wagyu beef, you could just buy an Oregon beef like from Bill over here, and it'll eat just as good as grass. So, but anyway, I don't have the percentage of turf. Do you know the answer? Yeah. Well, we don't. We only have one turf type fescue field on currently. Yeah. So yeah. So we do no-till, and we grow mostly annual ryegrass. So we rotate metafoam in. So there's a limited amount of crops we can rotate with annual ryegrass because of the soil, and how wet it likes it. So metafoam actually does likes wet feet. We can't plant wheat where we grow annual ryegrass. We can't plant other types of seed crops, and about a third of our farm actually really only supports wheat or other crops that don't like to be so wet. So. And we're always looking for new varieties. Like we were trying canola because we figured we wanted to see how it did on wet soils. Turns out canola doesn't like wet soils either. So if you know of something, we're always looking for something else. So.
Typically, our rotation age that we shoot for is at least 50, and we have older trees than that, but we have a plan that allows us to cut at a time of our choice, and so the age may vary just a little bit.
For Gordon, about how old are the trees in the regulatory set-aside acres, and do you do any work off-farm with helping other foresters be more sustainable?
Yes. The trees in the set aside are of a variety of ages. Some of them are trees that we've planted that since the time we planted them, regulation has taken that area. Some of the trees are very large. For instance, the trees in the stream buffer that I showed you the pictures of, a lot of those trees are, some of them are well over 100 years old. And yes, I do some work with other landowners that I have worked with for a number of years, and help them to develop management plans and to manage their harvest and reestablishment of their trees.
So
Yes.
What are you doing to manage the invasive species?
I'm sorry, what's that?
What are you doing to manage the invasive species? Are you using chemical herbicides through, how are you managing?
I use
Mushroom and such.
I use both. I use both handwork and I use chemicals, depending on the amount of area that I have to work with. Some of our property had a lot of invasive species when I first acquired it, so I used quite a lot of spraying at one time. I think I sprayed sprayed that property once, and then my preferred method for Scotch broom is I pull it by hand. That's the easiest, and typically, if once you get it under control, you can do that on a small acreage, but on some of my larger areas, if I had a problem, I'd spray it again.
And what are you spraying?
What do I spray? Oh, I'm not going to get into a whole list of chemicals and go through it, but it's just herbicides that are commercially available and that are licensed for forestry.
Are you using a combination of more than one chemical at a time?
Sometimes, sometimes not. Yes.
First of all, I want to commend you both for being here and being so brave and being here. We all know what that means. I really look up to tough, strong, brave women who are smart and also can't drive
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have any luck repeating your question. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And let me see if I can address a few of those points. First of all, yes, we do have a thriving industry. Probably the biggest detriment that we have today is that there are not enough people actually working in our industry. And well, thank you again. And I do believe that, yes, we do practice sustainable forestry on our land. I am not in agreement that our logging laws, as you said, are not adequate. I think as anyone who has studied the Forest Practices Act would know, we've made changes as we go along. And I don't consider it to be a subsidy when when I'm subject to regulation that takes part of our property. And would you let me answer? And honestly, I think again, you have a vastly different view of what goes on in Lane County than I do. And you say you've been doing it 20 years, and that's great. I've been doing it for 20 years anyway, too. And so we have a different point of view, and I respect your point of view, and appreciate your comments.
Can I? Oh.
So, sustainability, she's asking about sustainability and what we're doing for the future. What's the ratio that you plant to what you take?
I plant 12 pounds the acre.
Well, when you look at older stands of trees, we may harvest 50, 100 trees per acre. And when we plant many more than that. The reason for that is that we want to, in the process of growing those trees, select the best trees and to make sure that we do have a crop for the future. Make a lot of effort to make sure that we care for the soil, care for the water, and make sure that the trees are going to, to be growing there in the future. Okay, Marie has.
Yeah. So to address your sustainability issue, I thought my presentation spelled it out well, that we've been evolving, we've been changing, we've been adapting to new practices to make sure that we're producing more with the soil we have and leaving it better for the next generation. So I guess and for the record, we don't receive any subsidies. Grass seed is not included in the farm bill. And so I can't even answer that question because I don't get subsidies. So, but yes, Bill?
I would say that there are lots of definitions of sustainability, but as a 5-generation farmer, I would say that is sustainability. Were you not able to sustain yourself over the 5 generations? Was the generations number 4, number 3, number 2, number 1 not able to sustain themselves? You wouldn't be doing it today. So and we all have our different look at what is our definition of sustainability, but in a lot of cases, the farmer's ability to stay there and do what he's doing is that definition.
Say, I had one other thing too that you and I were talking about, and you mentioned a subsidy for forestry. Can you? Oh, okay. I guess I just misunderstood. Okay. Oh, yes, you're next.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Well, she says
So,
no.
I'm sorry. He'll repeat your question. So if you just say it.
Okay, so my question is, all of these these things that are growing into the watershed are killing our fish, and this is may I have the mic? Other people have had the mic.
So I think the way we're going to handle the mic, which is our kind of standard mode with Science Pub, is the audience member will just ask their question, and then we will have the speaker repeat it So then not everybody's coming up and taking the mic, and we're able to keep things moving. This is question and answer. So
So my question is, these chemicals are killing our salmon. These chemicals are killing our watersheds. They're making our salmon and our other fisheries not reproduce properly, and they're creating, and the runoff from logging that does not have a sustainable watershed and a sustainable watershed boundary, which should be at least 200 yards or something, really needs to be addressed. And the chemicals that have the runoff are really problematic for our watershed species, and that's bad for our economy. So, yeah.
Okay, again, we have a statement about chemicals in watersheds.
Study.
Okay, are we going to talk or are we going to listen? Anyway,
People talking on the microphone with their questions. When does that change? Are you getting paid off by a wirehouser again?
Sorry.
thank you. We had a question about chemicals in watersheds, and I guess probably the most recent and the best study that I can reference would be the study the Eugene Water and Electric Board did on the McKenzie River that showed that those chemicals were not present in the water. And industry has nothing to do with that study. That study was independent by the Water Board, and so again, I would, I'm afraid I'd have to respectfully disagree with your statement.
I got lots of questions. That guy in the back with the.
How many farms are in your organization? And while I find it really admirable that you have multi-generational farms, and that's something I think a lot of people aspire to, how do you work with people who are not from a multi-generational farm, who want to be starting out as a new farmer, and the prices of farmlands are now astronomical? So first off, like how many farms do you guys represent, and how do you work with farmers who are like new farmers who are trying to get into farming but don't have the resources of generational wealth or generational land inheritance?
Good question. So basically, how many farms are in an organization? And talking about beginning farmers, first generation farmers. I don't know the number of farmers in our organization, but I know we probably have, I don't know, I guess raise your hand here if you're a farmer in my organization. There's a few of them in the room. So, yeah. And that's just the people who were able to come tonight. So we have, it's farmers and foresters together. There's a lot of us from different backgrounds in different parts of the county. As for your first generation question, I do feel for someone trying to get into farming with the capital expenses, with the equipment and the land costs. I mean, yeah, it's not fun, and yeah, trust me. But what I would say is there's a lot of farmers retiring whose kids don't want to come back to the farm. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for people. I know a first generation farmer, he's in a part of our organization, who went to work for a farmer when he was just, in his young 20s, and now he is taking over that farm in Junction City. So there's opportunities there, and that's one way I would recommend it. I know how it's been done. And then, there's Farm Bureau has Young Farmers and Ranchers, and I know Oregon State has a lot of, Extension has a lot of resources as well on budgeting, because yes, I used to work in ag lending, and that was one of the things. People would come in and they have these dreams of owning a farm and a ranch, and I'd say, well, where are the numbers? And they wouldn't know how to budget or where to start, and that's one of the basic things is you need to know your numbers, and you need to pencil out in the end, because that's all part. There's, sustainability is a three-legged stool. You got your economics, your environment, and your social responsibility. And so, yeah, if the economics part of that stool doesn't work, then it's not going to work at all. So.
Marie, you have mentioned that you really care about soils and everything for farming, and I think a lot of Oregonians in Western Oregon see sloughing hill slopes and damaged soils
Well, soil protection and prevention of damages to soil is one of the goals of really anyone who's a forest owner, because we do look at soil as the, it's where our crop will grow. If you know of someone who is doing something as you allege, you should get hold of the Department of Forestry about that, because that is not within the law or the accepted forest practice to do that. Yes.
To add to that, we're a Gulf annual grower also, and we used to export about 80% of our crop. We now export 0% of our crop. We're already out of straw for the year because we've sold it to timber companies. So timber companies are all buying it for reseeding and for hydro seeding. And it's a crazy year. Within the last 2 years, we've tripled our sales of local straw for hydro seeding onto reclamation projects.
Well, it's very common that straw will be used not only for mulch but also used as a to keep suspended sediment that's in water to trap that so it doesn't make it into flowing water. Other? Yes, sir.
Can you remind me of the acreages you're working? And can you give me a rough idea of how many people to the acre the business is employed? And also, what's the kind of capital investment?
I'm sorry. I did not really understand what you said. I'm kind of hard of hearing. Could you maybe repeat that? Maybe. Do you know what the question? Why don't you go?
You asked basically how many acres we're farming, how many people per acre we have, and what's our capital investment. Yeah. Well, if my grandpa or my dad were in the room, they'd both be like, "That's none of your business." But it's a kind of a taboo subject around our house. But I'm okay. I think it's something people need to know. We farm around 3,500 acres, and on the farm, it's me, my husband, my dad, my mom. And we have 2 hired guys that work with us full-time year-round. In the summertime, we hire about 10 high school and college kids to run equipment for us, and that's a perfect summer job for them. They work 6 weeks, make nice money. So I don't know what that people ratio accounts to, but we're a few people with a lot of acres, I guess, so to speak. And then we have our seed cleaning facility, which staffs 2 people year-round, and then kids in the summertime to sack seed. As for capital investment, well, one reason Oregon's so great at growing grass seed is we have their mild winters and our really dry, hot summers. And that's awesome, but also the hindrance of that is we have to get it done in a short period of time. We have 6 weeks to get the crop in before it starts raining. Our rule of thumb down here in Camaswell, because once it starts raining on that soil, we can't get back out there, is to get everything done by September 15th. And because of that, we need specialized equipment, and we need the equipment to get it done. So the combine you saw up there, I guess it's costs about a small house, around $350,000 for a combine. Windrowers run a little less than that, about half of that. And so yeah, there's a lot of capital investment, but it's required to get the job done. They're used for 6 weeks and they sit in the barn, and I wish there was other ways we could utilize them. In the Midwest, they have custom harvest crews where the wheat crews start in Texas and move up to Montana, which is, I think it'd be a blast to drive combine or just drive equipment in that around, see all kinds of different farms. And Midwest farmers have 1 combine because they can harvest until Christmas, if not longer. So that's kind of where that's at.
Yes.
So your group represents all farms and forestry people in Lane County, right? So if we have a farm or forest, we can join your group, right?
Please.
Okay. So do you have membership forms here?
Uh-huh.
Excellent.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, sir.
I'm curious about the buffer space for forestry. Is it the same for independent forestry like you as it is for landlocked?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Oh, the question about buffer space for cutting to protect streams, and You know, the question of what is it? It's very complicated. It depends on the size of the stream. It depends on whether it has fish. And it's complicated enough that if you're a forester, you have to go to a manual to figure out exactly what you need to do. So I'm not really prepared to give you, you know, a number, but it's same thing. Same thing. I have to go to a manual and figure it out. And it's in the, you know, it's in the tens times something else in buffer, depending upon what the size of the stream is.
Can you go by the same rules that Weyerhaeuser does?
Yes. Yes. For instance, I can tell you that under the previous rules, the stream buffer that I showed you, that there was no activity within 20 feet, and then there was a certain basal area of which we had an abundance of basal area and shade that went out to 40 feet. And that would be just an example, but I remember that one because I had to actually figure that one out myself. Yes?
I think there's time for one more.
I just want to make a comment. You have a comment. No, I have already asked.
Well, I appreciate that you're pulling out your scotch room by hand, and do you aerial frame?
I have, yes.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because we looked into all the notifications that have been put into the Oregon Department of Forestry, and it appears that from what we found that only corporations aerial spray areas. So it's surprising to hear that you have. What is your aerial spray?
I'm sorry, what
What chemicals did you aerial spray?
again, I'm not going to go through a whole list of chemicals, but it was for brush control, and it was done by a licensed applicator. That was actually done in Douglas County.
Oh, okay, because we lived in Lake County.
Yeah.
The only ones that we found were corporations. So I just want to thank you, I guess
It is not. Oh,
I think I wish I had a neighbor like you, but maybe not in this area today. But my neighbor, clear cuts, there was no buffers on the streams, there's hardly any fish. We had a neighbor that came, an old resident that used to live on our land, and Sea Creek runs through our property, and it used to be water for Cottage Road. And he was just by actually 2 weeks ago, and he told us how when he was in 3rd grade, he grew up there and collected the fish for fish. There were many fish in the creek before, cutthroat, and we used to collect them and put them in buckets and bring them up to the upper pond, and there's no fish there anymore. And I feel like it's because of the clear cutting that's going on there. So I'm sorry, my question was whether you aerial spray. I'm surprised that you do. I thought you only ground spray, and I was going to thank you for the fact that you pull out your plants that you don't want by hand. And Scotch room actually is a really big thing, and this is a really good nitrogen booster. So instead of weeds, maybe that could be weeds.
herbicides are a valuable tool that people can choose to use or choose not to use, but I'll guarantee you that nobody uses it any more than they need to. It's not it's expensive to do it. It's complicated to do it, and I only do it when it's necessary. And if I can drive down the road and see a Scotch broom and pull it out, I will do that. And I'm sure most anybody would do that because Scotch broom doesn't have a lot of fans in Western Oregon.
Just one more. It'll be really short, I promise. So within the conversation in our county, within the conversation of the county, both in forestry and in farming, I hear the word corporate a lot. You just heard it. Could you please tell us what corporations mean in farming and in forestry, family farming and forestry in Lane County?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. We are a corporation. That's just the way the laws work. We're a corporation. Very good friend of mine. Are you a corporation?
Yeah, we're a corporation.
Very good friend of mine that owns a small sawmill that employs, I don't know, less than 100 people. He's a corporation. Most businesses are corporations, and you know, I think that probably calling someone corporate versus non-corporate can be maybe confusing. Well, no, even the shareholder doesn't work because the way we're set up, we're shareholders.
But are the shareholders all family?
In our case, they are. Well, no, but there are lots of very large corporations that are not publicly traded. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for all the great questions.